My name is David Carter. I'm 45, head coach of the Brookfield High Broncos football team, Central Ohio's pride every fall. I've spent 20 years on the sidelines, molding teenagers into teammates, turning Friday nights into small-town miracles under floodlights. When I'm not at practice, I fix up my old Craftsman house on Maple Street, mow my lawn at dawn, and come home each evening to Olivia, my wife of 15 years, who counsels students through their darkest hours. We never had kids. We didn't need any. Our students were our family. We were a team, me in khaki shorts and clipboard, her in her office, offering comfort. On game days, she'd sit in the stands, scarf wrapped tight, cheering me on with that bright smile that said, "I'm your biggest fan." 5 years ago, Brookfield celebrated its first state playoff win, and I gave my best speech ever. "This season is ours because we believe in each other." Olivia squeezed my hand afterward, tears in her eyes, and I thought, this is forever. But forever is a long game. Last January, something shifted. Olivia started arriving home late, after midnight sometimes, saying she'd stayed behind to finish reports. Her phone lay face down. I stopped asking. Then in March, I saw unfamiliar emails addressed to her work account, subject lines like, "Can we meet?" and "Midnight's clear." I told myself I was imagining things. Busy months at school. Standard counseling load. Trust the woman who stands by you for 15 years, right? Except one Friday, I drove past the high school parking lot at 11:45 p.m. on my way home from a boosters meeting. My car headlights caught her silver sedan backed against the bleachers. I slowed, heart thudding. She was there, leaning into the window of another car, one I recognized as Mason Whitaker's, the new real estate agent who'd been courting wealthy alumni for months. They melted into each other's arms. Olivia's scarf fluttered as she laughed into Mason's face. It was a private moment laid bare under the bleachers' cold lights. My throat went dry. I pulled over but didn't honk, didn't yell. I just sat in the darkness, watched them, a replay of my own nightmare. The woman who trusted me with her fears, sharing dust-ups with students and parents alike, now giving her laughter to someone else. For 10 minutes I listened to their whispers, their footsteps retreating into Mason's car. Then she drove off alone. I stayed until every echo of their voices faded. That night, instead of confronting her, I went home and brewed coffee at 3 a.m. In the silence of my kitchen. I replayed every detail in my mind. The leaves rattling in the wind, her dark hair brushing Mason's cheek, the final tilt of her head as she climbed into her car. I realized something. I'd thrown every challenge at the goal line and won, but in my own house, I'd been blindsided. The toughest opponents aren't on the field. They're in the chambers you build for love and trust. I lay awake until dawn, plotting my own game plan. No raw shouting or childish revenge. I'd spent years coaching these kids to stay cool under pressure. So would I. I needed evidence, undeniable, airtight, so that when I made my move, there'd be no question, no defense left. I called Marta, my electrician friend, to install a discreet sound recorder under our bed frame. I asked Trevor, my nephew, to swap out our kitchen lamp with a Wi-Fi camera I'd secretly taught him to hide. And I downloaded an app that would mirror Olivia's work email to a secure folder on my phone. Step by step, I built a dossier. Recordings from Mason's car idling in the dark. Copies of their midnight texts. A hidden snap I took through the bleachers slats. Everything would go into a single folder named Final Drive. Now I wake every morning thinking of strategy, like reviewing playbooks before a big game. I keep my cool in public, high-fiving the lads at practice, grilling brats at booster events, kissing Olivia's cheek at home as if nothing's wrong. She hums happily, oblivious that I already know every play she's made behind my back. Our town is gearing up for homecoming, the biggest night of the school year. I'm due to give the halftime pep talk. Olivia is hosting the post-game dance at the gym. All our friends, the entire community, will be there. They'll cheer us on. But when the scoreboard's lights go dark and the festive music still hums, I'll press play on Final Drive. I'll let the world watch her betrayal unfold on the jumbotron above the field. Texts, recordings, images, all time-stamped and undeniable. No war cries. No broken windows. Just truth. That's how I plan to win this game. The week before homecoming, Brookfield High buzzed with energy, posters in every hallway, band rehearsals at dawn, pep rally banners strung across Main Street. Yet inside me, it was as quiet as a locker room at midnight. I'd spent the last few days perfecting my Final Drive folder, and now I had to synchronize it with the biggest stage I'd ever used, our new stadium's video board. Monday evening, I texted Mason from my burner phone. "Hey, bro, Can you meet me at Sammy's Auto on 5th? Got something to show you. He responded almost immediately. Sure thing, coach. I'm free at 7. I stood by my truck after practice, hood up, fiddling with its engine light. When Mason arrived in his SUV, I waved him over. He leaned into my window, smiling, sleek suit, perfect hair, that air of someone who thinks the world is still his. Everything okay, coach? He asked, peering in. Yeah, I said, tapping my phone. I found a dashboard camera kit that fits your model. He cocked his head. Cool. I've been meaning to record some drives. I slid in the USB labeled FW001 dashboard cam and a small card. Install it behind the rearview 12V port. Instructions on drive. He nodded and took it without suspicion. I watched him drive off with the evidence I'd already decrypted, recordings of his and Olivia's whispered meetings in my car, their laughter when they thought no one was listening. Now to the world, it would appear as brand new footage from his own dash. Wednesday, I enlisted my assistant coach, Travis, to help with timing at the field. Travis owed me big time after I covered his court fines last spring, a messy misunderstanding with underage drinking at the fireworks show, so he agreed without question. We met under the bleachers at noon, cameras installed to show Olivia slipping behind the stadium gates, Mason's car idling. Travis adjusted motion sensors and gave me a thumbs up. The artificial turf smelled dusty, like a promise. Game day, he said. You ready? I nodded. 5 minutes after halftime. Thursday night, as Olivia kissed me goodbye before heading to the dance setup committee at the gym, I caught her in the kitchen. Busy night, she said, planting a quick kiss on my cheek. Big dance, I replied, squeezing her hand. She leaned in. I love you, David. Break a leg tomorrow. I forced a smile. You too. Her breath on my skin felt like a lie. Friday, homecoming. The stadium glowed with orange and brown, the stands packed. The Broncos looked sharp in white jerseys. I called the game from the sideline with practice cheer. My playbook opened on its familiar page. Keep cool. Keep calling plays. By the time halftime arrived, Broncos up 21-7, I was already halfway convinced this was the best play I'd ever called. I tapped my watch. 1,500 hours on the clock meant 15 minutes of festivities. Perfect. Travis hurried me onto the track. He slipped me the clicker, his eyes fixed on the Jumbotron control booth. Whenever you say the word, coach. The homecoming court paraded out. Cheerleaders flipped in unison. Olivia joined them briefly, waving from the front row. She was radiant in her coral dress, announcing Mason as prom king, her laughter echoing across the field. I stepped to the microphone Travis handed me. The PA crackled. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in honoring our homecoming royalty, prom king Mason Whitaker and prom queen Olivia Carter. The crowd roared. Mason swept Olivia into an embrace. She smiled at him, oblivious. Their moment drenched in spotlight and applause felt like knives in my ribs. I nodded, hands steady. But before we let the music play, here's a tribute to the spirit of Brookfield. Travis clicked the remote. The Jumbotron whirred. For a moment, I thought I'd misfired. Nothing but our school crest on the screen. Then the first slide appeared. September 28th, 11:47 p.m., Mason to Olivia. I didn't know how easy you made it. See you at the bleachers. The crowd hushed. Mason's grin froze. Olivia's mouth opened, turned into a silent no. Next, a brief clip of Mason's car idling under the field lights, audio faint but clear. Olivia's voice, soft with laughter. He thinks I'm delivering awards. This is our secret. The PA played the clip. Children tugged their parents. Olivia stumbled back. Mason's face drained. I watched as their world unraveled in pixels and sound. No shouts, just stunned disbelief. The final slide. A photograph of Olivia and Mason on my front porch, timestamp, October 3rd, late, caught by my hidden camera, their silhouettes entwined. Then black. I stepped down from the track. Behind me, thunderous chaos, questions, gasps, someone screaming Sarah's name. I walked into the tunnel, heart steady. My job was done. By sunrise Saturday, the entire town had seen Final Drive on loop. My phone buzzed with silent texts, squad members cheering me on, parents thanking me for exposing the truth. But at home, I found only 2 voicemails from Olivia, shaky apologies and desperate pleas. I deleted them without listening. 8 a.m., the school district called an emergency meeting of the Board of Education. They wanted to review the evidence I'd forwarded as pertaining to staff conduct. Within hours, Olivia was suspended from her counselor role. They'd assigned her desk to the substitute. Her nameplate sat face down on the cubicle wall, a mute accusation. I spent the morning at the firehouse, sliding down the pole and rolling hoses across the bay. The guys practiced drills around me, but I moved through it like a ghost. Each shout of "nice form" felt distant. Still, there was purpose in every task. Hoses coil, ladders rise, lives saved. In that order, I told myself. At noon, I drove to the school without fanfare. A U-Haul truck waited in the staff lot. Olivia's things packed by the district under their safekeeping policy. I'd rented it under a pseudonym, paid cash, no questions asked. I found her in the old guidance suite, collecting a few personal items. A framed photo of our first state playoff win, her antique salt and pepper grinder from our kitchen, a stack of unread student thank you notes. She looked smaller than I remembered. "David, please," she whispered. "Let's talk." I nodded and gestured to the driver. He passed me 2 boxes and a duffel. I loaded them into the U-Haul's back. "Everything's here," I said quietly. She bit her lip. "You don't have to do this like it's over." "It is," I interrupted. My voice was calm, too calm. "They need to know, and so do you." Tears pooled in her eyes. She reached for me. I stepped back. "I trusted you," I said, voice low. "You chose a secret life instead." She turned away, clutches the duffel straps. I watched her back stiffen as she fought for composure. Finally, she bent and kissed her photo. Then she walked to the U-Haul, climbed in, closed the door. I heard the engine cut, then roar off down Maple Street. That afternoon, I returned to the Board of Education meeting. The room was packed with parents, teachers, even a few players I'd coached. I sat beside the superintendent, placed the final dossier on his desk, the unedited audio recording from our bedroom mic. Olivia's voice describing me as clueless, laughing with Mason about how easy it is. He nodded grimly. "The board will vote on termination." I nodded and leaned back.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing experience, but we really need your support, namely a subscription to the channel, which can make it possible to hire a professional voice actor and make the best content for you.
Arms folded. No triumph. Only relief. Back at Station 42, I found my nephew, Trevor, lounging over a textbook. "Board meeting went well?" I said. He grinned. "Once they hear that tape, she's done." I allowed a small smile. Time for a fresh playbook. That night, I sat alone on my porch, flashlight in hand, reading the district's policy on breach of professional conduct. The words "immediate dismissal" glowed back at me. I drained my beer and set the can on the railing. When I looked up, the bonfire festival's distant fireworks painted the sky. Each burst felt like a promise, a new season, a clean slate. Behind me, the darkened windows of my house held its own history. I had rewritten the final chapter. And when morning came, I'd step into a world unshadowed by her betrayal, ready to coach the next generation, coach my own life, one honest play at a time. 3 weeks after homecoming, Mason Whitaker resurfaced at the Brookfield Rotary Club banquet, a sold-out fundraiser in the old community hall. He'd been quiet since the Jumbotron reveal, but lined up solid behind his polished smile. A new career in community relations, he told anyone who'd listen. Tonight, he was to be the keynote speaker. I bought my ticket in advance under my own name, no burner needed. Tonight wasn't about my football team or the school board. It was about making Mason's next lie impossible to sustain. I slipped into a back corner table, ordered water, and watched him stride to the podium. Crisp suit, gleaming cufflinks, the very picture of civic virtue. Under the banquet tables, I felt the pack in my jacket pocket, the USB from my bedroom mic, loaded with the final audio clip Alex and I had edited at midnight. I tested the clicker in my hand, a discreet silver remote. Across the room, the projector hummed, waiting for its cue. Mason cleared his throat and launched into a practiced riff about building trust, community partnership, and serving your neighbors. All words he'd used to seduce my wife behind my back. My jaw set. He couldn't sell that story again. Midway through his speech, when he thanked his wife and devoted husband, I slid from my seat and stepped onto the little stage. Conversation died. A murmur rippled through the room as Mason's eyes flicked toward me, puzzled. "Pardon the interruption," I said, voice carrying over the silent rows of Rotarians. "Mr. Whitaker, you've spoken often of trust." I clicked the remote. The projector flicked on behind him. The first slide showed my car idling under the stadium lights, time-stamped September 28th. Beneath it, a text from Mason to Olivia. I've got you under my skin. I'll see you at midnight behind the bleachers. Gasps echoed. Mason's face blanched. He stepped toward me, but I clicked again. A grainy audio played through the hall speakers, Mason's voice, recorded under my bed frame. She thinks I'm just a friend. Soon she'll be mine entirely. Who would believe a real estate agent's affair? Rotarians exchanged horrified looks. Mason's mouth worked. No words. The final slide was a photo of their rooftop embrace over Main Street, from my kitchen's hidden camera. No caption needed. I turned to face the stunned audience. I'm David Carter, and I've spent my life teaching young men to face the truth, no matter how hard it is. I trust you to judge Mason on his own words. Murmurs swelled to shouts. Mason abandoned the podium and bolted. I pivoted, let the room absorb the weight of his confession. No cheers. No pity. Just the clear, unbearable silence of betrayal laid bare. Stepping off the stage, I passed tables of old friends and watched heads nod in solemn agreement. A few stood to applaud softly, a recognition, not of spectacle, but of honesty. Outside, in the cold night air, I caught up to Travis by the loading dock. He clapped me on the back. That was perfect. I nodded, breath visible in the lamplight. Community deserves its truth. We watched the banquet hall doors reopen as outraged whispers poured out. Mason's face hovered in the light, drawn and defeated as he mounted his car. When the engine finally roared, I felt the last flicker of that old pain wash away. Because community isn't built on polished lies, it's built on the courage to expose them. And now, I was free to turn this page. The morning after the Rotary Club banquet, Brookfield felt quieter, as if the town was catching its breath. News vans were gone, replaced by whispered conversations at the diner and on the quad. I spent that dawn shift coiling hoses, the steady rhythm calming my mind. When the day's drills ended, I parked at the high school and walked out onto the track alone. I carried a single football, the same one I'd used to open practice every season. I set it at midfield and knelt to dust off the laces. There, under the early sun, I felt the first true sense of release. No ghosts on this turf, only the echo of honest sweat and honest work. By lunchtime, I'd heard the district's final verdict. Mason Whitaker was stripped of his realtor license, cited for breach of public trust, and barred from holding civic office for 5 years. Olivia, under pressure from parents and administrators, tendered her resignation from the school. Their departures felt like bookends to a brutal chapter. That afternoon, I went to pick up Olivia's last box from the U-Haul depot, her childhood teddy, her sewing machine, the local awards she'd once brought home with pride. I paid the clerk, loaded it into my trunk, and drove to the old storage unit behind the auto shop. There, I unlocked the door and found the box of Sarah's keepsakes. No, Olivia's now, travel photos, chafing mugs from our coffee dates, letters she'd mailed to me but never sent. I opened it once more. One last glance at the life we built, the trust one gave, the promise I thought we kept. When the sun reached its peak, I carried the box out to the edge of town where the little creek runs under the rural bridge. I set it down, lit a small torch, and watched one by one as the photos curled into flame, letters blackened, the teddies singed. I stood there until only ashes drifted in the breeze. That evening, I received a text from Claire, the nurse I'd met at the library renewal readings. Stories of Renewal, Part 3, tonight at the community center. Will you share? My thumb hovered over the reply. Part of me wanted to cling to silence forever. But I knew growth isn't silent. I typed back, I'll be there. The community center's hall hummed with warmth, tables of baked goods, string lights overhead, families clustering around folding chairs. Claire greeted me with a hug and handed me a cup of tea. On the podium, neighbors read tales of second chances, a teacher who rescued her classroom after a fire, a baker who opened her shop after bankruptcy, a veteran finding peace with a service dog. When my turn came, I stepped up and offered a short reflection, not about betrayal or revenge, but about truth as foundation. We build our lives like stadiums. Foundations matter. When one beam crackles, the whole structure can fall. But when we excavate old lies, we prepare for fresh steel and new lights. Tonight, I stand before you with that new foundation. I spoke of the football at midfield, the burn box by the creek, the dignity in exposing what festers in the dark. When I finished, the room rose in applause, soft and genuine. Afterward, Claire walked me home under a harvest moon. We paused at my front steps. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small framed quote. Truth is the compass guiding the broken home. I want you to have this, she said. I accepted it with gratitude. Not pity, but partnership. In the weeks that followed, I repainted the storm-worn porch a bright, hopeful blue. I planted perennials in the flower boxes where Olivia's herbs once grew. The craftsman who'd hung my new front door, solid oak with a stained glass insert, complemented the fresh look. One Saturday afternoon, I passed by Brookfield Stadium just as my team arrived for spring training. I stopped at midfield, tossed that single football high, caught it on the fly, and nodded to myself. Below the Jumbotron, silent now, I noticed a small banner the boosters had raised, the spirit of Broncos unbroken. I smiled. That night, alone on my porch, I slid the framed quote onto the mantel, next to a photo of the team hoisting the trophy 5 years ago. I poured a final cup of coffee, black, no sugar, and breathed deep. In the quiet glow of the new front light, I felt my heart settle on the truth. I have rebuilt. I have reclaimed. And I have a place in this town that no lie can ever steal. Spring practice rolled into April, and the Broncos' first home scrimmage felt like the ultimate fresh start. The stadium grass, newly resodded after winter's frost, looked impossibly green in the afternoon sun. I arrived early, water jug in hand, and watched as the team ran drills, passing routes, blocking sleds, the cheerleaders practicing their pyramid in the end zone. A light breeze off the cornfields carried the echoes of last season's triumphs and of last fall's betrayal. I'd spent the last few months rebuilding every corner of my life, repainting the porch, planting lavender where Olivia's herb garden once stood, and co-organizing those stories of renewal evenings at the library. Claire's friendship had become a quiet anchor, no fireworks, just steady light. She was there today, seated in the small grandstand, notebook in lap, watching with a gentle smile. At 3 p.m. sharp, the ref's whistle blew and practice ended. I gathered the players in a tight huddle. They looked to me, young faces waiting for direction. I held up the football from that midnight practice, the one I'd used to dust off my resolve. Bringing this forward means more than yards and touchdowns, I said. It means we play honest. We leave everything out here, no secrets, no shadows. You uphold each other, on and off this field. They broke the huddle with a roar that shook the bleachers. I watched them disperse, their energy a living promise of what comes next. After practice, I found Claire waiting by the concession stand, 2 cups of lemonade in hand. She offered me one. I accepted gratefully. We sat on the metal bleachers, sipping as the sun dipped low. You looked good today, she said. I shrugged. Feels good to walk out here without a weight on my shoulders. She nodded. You've earned every peaceful moment. Her words settled around me like homecoming banners. We talked about the stories she'd collected, next week's theme, rebuilding after loss. She asked if I'd share again. I smiled. I'll do better than that. I'll help others find their own fields to rebuild. That evening, as dusk settled, I made one last official move. I called the school board and asked to address all staff at the year-end awards ceremony, not to revisit betrayal, but to deliver a simple charge: carry your truth on to every field you enter. They agreed. On the banquet stage weeks later, I looked out at teachers, coaches, counselors, some of the same faces who'd watched the Jumbotron reveal with shock. I didn't need to mention names or scandals. I spoke of the spring sun rising after long winters, of new growth breaking through scorched earth. I ended with, our stories shape us, but they don't have to define us. When lies burn down the old, we stand together on the ashes and build something stronger. Applause washed over me. It wasn't about me. It was about every single person who'd stayed when honesty was hardest to find. Back at my Maple Street house that night, Claire joined me on the porch swing. The acrylic sign I'd nailed above our door read, "Truth wins the day." We watched fireflies weave through the garden. She rested her head on my shoulder. What now? She whispered. I breathed in the night air, free of smoke or secrets. We keep building, I said. Because life's greatest plays aren't the ones you rehearse. They're the ones you write as you go. She smiled and slipped her hand into mine. In the seasons that followed, I coached the Broncos to another winning record, guided them through playoff storms, and cheered from the sidelines as they discovered their own strength. On quiet weekends, I wrote articles for the Community Voices anthology, offering my story as a beacon for others. Claire and I took hikes in the rolling hills, drank coffee at dawn, and talked about a future without fear of shadows. Sometimes I pass the old stadium gate on my morning run and pause a moment. The Jumbotron is quiet now, the bleachers empty. But I know what happened here matters. How a man reclaimed his life with truth, not vengeance. How a town came together when the lights revealed what was hidden. And years from now, when another coach asks me for advice, I'll say this. The toughest opponent you'll ever face is the one you bring into the locker room of your heart. Face it with honesty. Play it with integrity. And when the final whistle blows, you'll stand tall, no matter the score. Because at Brookfield High, on that emerald field under floodlights, I learned that the truest victory isn't a trophy. It's living so boldly in your own truth that no lie can ever touch you again.
What do you think of the story? Write in the comments.